What's going on, future me? It's a new week, so you know what that means. Of course, new pre-market plan. Have to be prepared for this coming week. It is NFP week, first week of the month, as always. So there are a couple of different observations that I've already made. As you guys can see, just to jump straight into it, we are looking at the dollar on the monthly. With that, I mean, it's still the same sentiment, right? We still have 3 days left in the month. Um, Honestly, a toss up whether or not we'll get to 103 in that time. It's a pretty strong move to get to 103, so probably unlikely. But with NFP and everything else coming up, anything is possible. So still have the same sentiment. Still have that evening start into 103. Would like to see, of course, the dollar at least tag 103. I feel like it's programmed in many ways to for us to again at least wick, like I've said last week, at least wick somewhere in the 103 region. Going straight into the weekly, this is where it gets kind of interesting here. Is of course, as I've mentioned last week, we this candle, this base that we've kind of built here, it is the makings of a bounce. With that though, right, like this most recent week's candle would kind of lead you to believe that that's not that statement doesn't hold much weight, right? Like we're forming wicks to the upside. We're trying to build momentum into that zone here, right around this 618, to potentially break it. And one of the things that stuck out to me when I was doing my pre-market analysis is this week's candle, right? This is the first week of November's candle. And funny enough, as with every first week of the month, that is NFP week, right? We had huge momentum to the downside that week, and something that I've also made an observation on as well is if we go into the calendar here, we look back, right? I think it's the last like 5, 6, or 7. What's this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The last 7 NFPs, the last 7 months, we have always printed above the forecast numbers. So that just makes me think like, of course I can't predict what the numbers are going to be, what they're going to come out as, but if for whatever reason we come in, excuse me, with numbers that are potentially better than the forecast, we could see a huge dump right into that level at 103, right? Like it just acts in confluence as far as the levels of structures are concerned. For us to make that move into 103, and I feel like especially with this last week's candle, it makes it much more clear for me going into the daily. Of course, as I mentioned many times, in order for us to continue to be bearish, we'd have to either break and retest this level, or overall just plow straight through it for us to remain again bearish, and then looking at where the floor is thereafter. But until then, we do have a pretty solid support here. And then outside of that, let me move this. This is for the weekly. And then outside of that, right, I did mention this 108 structure, this retest here. We did get knocked back from that level as well. And something that, again, just piggybacking off of my analysis on the weekly, we have the daily here as well as far as the NFP candle is concerned, right here, right? That first Friday of November. And what do we get? A huge dump to the downside. Why? The forecast numbers just so happen to be better, or rather the actual numbers just so happen to be better than the forecast numbers. And this has been happening for months and months in a row. So that just makes me think like, right, like we have every month it's always the same thing. We always have jolts. We always have these different sort of catalysts, and it helped us make this move to the upside. So what are the chances that the same thing happens just at a different level of structure, right? We come up, we have open the week up strong, we retest this level at 108 that we already reject from it once more, and then we have this huge momentum to the downside on the NFP candle that eventually breaks this level of structure, right? Like, of course, I'm just throwing out ideas, hypothesizing, and everything else, but when you look at it from that perspective, it becomes extremely clear, right? And of course, when we look at gold, and I'll get into that later when I cover it, gold is right at a very pivotal point on the chart, right at that 1756 resistance. Honestly, I'm bullish above 1756. We recently got rejected, and of course, I'll cover that as I get into the different pairs and everything else. But I mean, it's setting up to potentially break that level if we can find strength above 1756, right? And of course, that would act in confluence with dollar weakness. So I'm just trying to line all these things up and make it make sense to me. Especially since the last 7 months, we've always, again, printed good NFP numbers resulting in dollar weakness. So with that said, I mean, it's just something something to take into consideration. We can also take this into consideration here as well. We have the October NFP candle, not a huge amount of momentum. We could look back even further, right? I mean, the September NFP candle, let's see, this one here, downside momentum. Go back further, or is this it? Oh, indecision candle rather, excuse me, for that NFP week. We can even go back, let's see, August. That first Friday, not a huge amount of momentum, not a huge amount of strength, but regardless, that's just my overall take on it. I mean, if of course, take it with a grain of salt. Overall structure is still structure, so I would still like to see our reactions to that 108 retest, and of course, ranging within that 108 and that 105 sort of level. This is still a bouncer break level. If we want to continue to see gold to the upside, I would need to see dollar weakness on the other side of that. So I hope that makes sense. Going straight into JPYBasket, this one will be pretty quick. Nothing super crazy has happened this month or this week for the yen. Still the same sentiment. Last week we pretty much printed an indecision candle. We've just broken this channel. We reclaimed the range low. Still of the sentiment that we, at maximum could go play back into this range mid. Daily, same thing here as well. Just basic consolidation until the end of the week. We started to pick up just a little bit. I want to reiterate this. I said it in last week's plan. The only sort of area of interest I'm looking at here is like 8,000 area. Of course, like the break from 77.65 into 8,000 area could be interesting for GJ shorts, especially when you look at that chart. But otherwise, I mean, I'm not really entertaining it too much. And of course, on the other side of that, the 71.70 breaks would be bullish for GJ. So jumping straight into it, we have the British pound. This one's actually pretty interesting as well. As I mentioned in my previous pre-market plan, these next 2 weeks are pretty pivotal. We have 3 days left in the month, and we're pushing right up against that 121 sort of resistance, that 121.30 sort of resistance, or SR level, so to speak. And just we're printing into it with so much momentum, so much strength, right? But honestly, you can't really, you have to take that with a grain of salt, just because we can gain all this momentum into the level, and when it times the time comes to actually break it, we end up rejecting. So you never know. But with that, again, pivotal next week for us. When we look at the weekly, it looks like a very clean reclaim right into this last level of structure here at, again, like 121.15 sort of area. As long as we maintain this momentum and continue to sort of pick up strength, I see no problem with going into the 126 sort of level that is acting in confluence with the 618 from the last swing high to the swing low. So it just lines up and makes a lot of sense. And of course, in that time, you could see GJ buys as long as we continue to see British pound strength. So that's just kind of my sentiment at the moment. It looks like a very solid reclaim for the pound. When we look at the daily, that next sort of level of resistance, this next sort of range here, that I guess you could kind of call like a range high. It is showing a bit of significance, especially with this last day's candle, this last Friday's candle. Short width to the upside. We could be coming again to retest this 116 sort of level before a move higher. I guess the only thing that would really invalidate that for me is breaks below and reclaims below 116.78 sort of deal. Until then, I would not be fading the GBP sort of strength. And overall, again, of the sentiment that it's a pretty clean reclaim, and would like to, use that in confluence with potential GJ buys as long as the yen stays weak. So that kind of sums it for the indexes. Pretty quick on the indexes. They don't want to go, too crazy outside of the insight on the dollar that we just had there. Going straight into GJ. Let me bring that up here. When we look at the weekly, right? Like the weekly is just playing around. The weekly, we're just playing around at this range high, right? Like nothing super crazy as far as strength is concerned. We haven't had like a crazy bullish candle like the previous weeks are concerned. We haven't had anything of the sort. But, I mean, again, as far as nuance is concerned, we're still printing above these wicks, right? We're still printing above this level of liquidity. So, in some cases, in some ways, you might think, we might be getting bullish soon as long as we continue to, maintain ourselves above this level. Time is going to tell, right? It becomes a lot clearer for me on shorter time frames, because when we look at the daily, right? awesome. Where we're above this range high. We look at back. We look left at these previous highs here as well. We're printing above it, but we're not printing above it necessarily with strength, right? Like we're printing bullish candles, but look at these wicks, right? And then when we add that in with fib confluence, right, the swing high to the swing low, we're right at the 618. So although the weekly range high has been broken on that weekly time frame, it is not enough for me to have a ton of conviction in GJ longs, just because, again, look at the chart, right? Like look at these last couple of candles, look at the rejection that we've seen here. You can make a case for like, oh, like, look at this wick to the downside, but we don't have any fib confluence with that, right? We're at a level of resistance, the weekly and daily range high, the June high. We also have the 618 confluence. Like there are so many different factors that would make a case for GJ shorts or a reversal back lower, rather than getting bullish at this area. Again, time will tell. I just need to see what price is sort of telling me. It becomes a lot clearer on lower time frames as always. But with that, we still have not broken these previous sort of highs here either, right? We've just wicked at those levels, like 168, 66 sort of level. So with that in mind, right, this should still be potentially like lower high and lower low sort of structure forming. We'll just have to see how the week kind of opens up and how everything plays out. Going straight into the 4 hour, this makes a lot more sense, right? Like we're really stuck within sort of a range, right? When it really comes down to it, I still kind of hold true to this bubble that I have. It's bouncer break, sells below, buys above. I am bullish above the June high. A clean print and retest above that June high with strength will get me long into 172 without a doubt, like all day. On the other end of that, right, we have 167 sort of 50, 167 sort of 60 area to the downside. Like if we get clear weakness, clear momentum to the downside past those levels, 166, 60, 50 sort of area, this trend will be broken. I will then be getting bearish, and I'll be wanting to take shorts at that point. We ended the week on a really strange candle, right? Like wick to the downside. When I look at it from this perspective, right, we've had the break in, the retest, a new high, retest again, and we just had this swing fail, right? So it's just it's consolidating within this range. It's too early to really tell. What will tell me is the breaks of those levels. I'm getting bullish above 168.77. I am bearish below 167 sort of 60, 167.50 area. In confluence with the break of this channel, it just makes the most sense to me, right? And I would be playing that into these levels here. I'll be playing shorts into 166.80 and 165 sort of 90 area, as well as lower than that. And then on the other side, I would then be playing longs into 172 sort of area. And just jumping straight into it, because I want to, again, like, I don't want to kind of rush through this. I just want to be extremely clear and to the point as far as my plan is concerned. I want to get into the 1 hour. This is the 4 hour trend line that we're looking at right here, right? This 4 hour trend line has been holding up for what feels like weeks already, right? Like we have not disrespected this trend line. So of course, if we were to get bearish again, 167 sort of 50 area, a break below that would be perfectly in confluence with that channel break. That would be a clear disrespect of this 4 hour trend line, telling the trend line to go, to go kick rocks. Like it's extremely clear to me that we would be bearish below 167.50 area. We just have too much confluence. We have a potential double top here as well with in confluence with the June high. Excuse me, stumbling over my words here. But it all, for me at least, just adds up overall. You could also make a case too, right? Like we have this little fib. This is probably a 618 here, no? 786. Right, so we have, a break, clean momentum into the June high once again, and then a retest of that September 22 high. So it's very likely that we come up and tag this June high again before we make a move decisively. Also, when we look at it from the fact that we are respecting this trend line, right, we're still in an uptrend. So I mean, as far as probabilities are concerned, the kind of odds are in your favor to at least see the June high once more, to make our decision of whether or not we're going to reject that area and break back below, these last week candle lows and mids and everything else, or if we're going to break it with strength and continue higher. So overall, I'm like out of breath. We can even take these fibs, right? We can look at this swing high to the swing low. Doesn't add a ton of context here either. 786 evening star here from the June high lower, but this is still a higher high, right? Like this, this wick to the downside is still a higher high. Like we're not breaking lows or anything of that sort, which is why, again, I want to reiterate that we're at the mercy of the range right now. Once again, going straight back into the original point that I made, I am bullish above the June high and breaks of the last week candle high, like 168.70, 169 sort of area. If we get a break and reset with strength above that level, I'll be getting long. Without a doubt. No question. On the other side of that, if we break this trend line that we've been respecting week after week and this level of structure that we've been respecting for this last sort of week that we've been trading, a break below that, below 167.55 is bearish to me, right? Like in the arrows outline that I try to make it as clear as possible for my future self. Super self-explanatory. As far as, trading inside of this range, I will not be taking trades inside of 167.96 and 168.72. That's just not, I'll be sitting on my hands until then. If you'd like to take a trade, awesome. If not, no worries. I'm just going over what I'll be doing and everything else. So I hope that makes sense. I feel like I laid it out pretty cleanly there. We have, what is this? 65 pip range, 78 pip range, is probably 100 something pip range. Awesome. And that pretty much sums it. As far as trades for GJ, I had a loss right here. Basically, it wasn't a loss. I exited it early because I felt that I entered too early. We had this strength above the, the range at 166.91 that I outlined in my plan last week. I mentioned that breaks above this are bullish, and I wanted to get in on a retest of the September 22 high sort of area to then ride it into the June high. I didn't get where I just had a strange feeling that I might have been too early, especially when I saw this engulfing candle here as well. So I just exited it, and thank God that I did. Because of course that would have just been negative 1R. No worries, regardless, loss is a loss. I made a mistake and paid for it. It's cool. But thereafter, right, much deeper retest, much more practical retest here at 167.57. We had upward momentum, and thereafter I actually made a video on this. I don't know if I'll post it or not. It's just part of my journal, whatever the case is. We started basically forming a base here, right? You saw all these long wicks to the downside, and then this engulfing candle confirmed it for me to get into buys. So I had another trade here, basically 57 pips. My original TP was at 168.73. I could have just let it ride out into my TP. That's just something that I'm working on as well with active management. Typically, when I place a trade, I just leave it. I let it do its thing, right? I placed the trade for a reason. My analysis is there for a reason. Why am I going to monitor the trade? And that happens even when we take profit sometimes, right? Like, I woke up at 5 a.m. and I saw this huge candle. I'm like, awesome. Like, I'll just TP early. It is what it is. When in actuality, I should just let it ride out to my TP. Stop active managing your trades. Stop babysitting them. If your strategy works, it'll work regardless, right? Anyways. And then I think I had, let me check my... So I had this, and then I had that was the buy. And then I had a small sell as well. I had a sell right, where was it? 167.98. 167.98. I had a sell right, was it right here? I think I had a sell on this engulfing candle right here. 167.98. And I didn't hold it for very long either. I took a 37 pip loss on it. It was basically like, what is it? On my journal it says negative 0.3R. Like nothing super crazy. I exited it early because I saw this engulfing candle to the upside, right? This long way to the downside, momentum to the upside. And of course that just plays into what I was just mentioning, active managing your trades, right? Otherwise I would have had a clean move into 167.35 before it rebounded. Regardless, it rebounded to the June high, so I would have been stopped anyways if I did hold it. But I wanted to be clear and transparent in the trades that I did take, and the mistakes that I did make, because we all make them, right? Like it doesn't, there's no such thing as necessarily like a perfect trade or just a disciplined one. So with that said, that sums it for GJ. I'm gonna go ahead and get into gold now. Let me switch to the weekly. We'll go to gold. Awesome. So now we have the weekly the weekly chart for gold pulled up here. And as I mentioned last week, right, when I see this sort of price action, I'm just thinking, where is price going to retest? Like, what level are we going to find a floor at before we move higher? Because we have so much momentum, right? We have so much momentum into this level that it's only right that we retrace thereafter before a move higher. And I mean, it's really hard to say because we did get a very solid retest, and I'll get into that on lower time frames. But I mean, this is sort of an indecision candle, right? We had, long, lower wick creation to the downside. Nothing really the weekly candle is telling us right here. So we'll go ahead and jump into lower time frames to add a bit more context. And as you can see, right, as I mentioned, and this is really the beauty of the strategy, is that I had mentioned last week that we'd have this 618 sort of level to bounce from in confluence with the 1725 area, have this level here as well, this sort of arrow and everything else to kind of point out, we're going back into 1756, and now we're sort of stopping up, right? This last Friday's candle that to end the week was sort of an indecisive candle. It didn't necessarily print above 1756, but printed right below it with a little bit of weakness, right? And at the end of the day, I'm only going to be bullish above 1756. This is a bounce or break level for me. Also in confluence with this 382 here as well. We did get good momentum into that level, but what will make it solid and definitive for me is a break of that level. I hope that makes sense. Because again, we wicked pretty heavily into the 618. I wish I would have caught this one as well. I was just a little bit late to the party. And we moved into that 1756 level, and now we're kind of sitting on our hands to see where we need to be. Because as you guys can see, right, we had, again, last week I covered the head and shoulders. We had the measured move into 1725, huge wick to the downside, eventually rebounded. But now, as we can see, right, 1756, we have to think to ourselves, is this the neckline retest? Or are we just coming back into this level to sort of rebound and consolidate before we build a base eventually and move higher? Because, we have this sort of level of microstructure here that we printed above, and we went back to retest 1756. But look at these wicks. We had the rejection up here, clear around the top, engulfing candle to the downside. We came back up with a little bit of momentum, and the last candle of the day couldn't even form a solid body, candle into the 618. Not only that, right? We look at all the confluences. We have, of course, a liquidity zone reaction. This is a level of structure that's clearly respected. We have a pattern formation here as well. We have of course, the head and shoulders, and now the neckline retest. And we also have fib confluence. We're right at the 618, had the 786, and we're clearly rejecting. So again, for me to stay bullish on gold, for me to want to continue to take buys, I need strength above 1756, a break and retest of 1756, and I will be happy to take buys all day, every day. Otherwise, as we can see on the 1 hour, I probably wouldn't feel so inclined to do so. And it becomes extremely clear, like I said, right? Like, look at this 618, extremely clear. This swing high to this swing low, and we have a huge wick into 1756 in confluence with the 618, our bounce or break level, right? So it's really the same sort of predicament that we're in with GJ, that we're in with gold, right? We have this range, this last week candle low on the 18th of November at 1747, and we have this range high at 1756. I would love to see, that previous last 2 weeks candle low get broken 1747 into 1735 and short it from there. Or if we bounce at 1747, gain momentum and break above 1756, I would then be wanting to get long. So I hope you guys are kind of understanding. I hope my future self, more importantly, is understanding kind of where I'm taking this. Because to me, at least, it's extremely clear, right? We're bouncing within these two levels, within this range. I need clear strength above or below those levels to really make a decision on whether or not I want to get long or short. While we're in the interim, while we're ranging in between this, I'm cool to sit on my hands. So I hope that makes sense. I hope that I didn't speak too fast for my future self or for anyone out there that's listening. I do want to give a shout out to like the 3 people. So I subscribe to myself. I'm, no shame, right? I'm my biggest supporter. So I just want to get that out of the way because it says I have 4 subscribers, but I really have 3. So the 3 of you that are holding it down with me and my future self, God bless you. Take care. I hope that, of course, you living your best life to your utmost potential and everything else. I hope that this was clear. Once again, just to recap, I am bullish above 1756 with strength, bearish below 1747. I will not be trading this range. We're at the 618, all these different things. I will just be sitting on my hands until we break those ranges. Same thing for GJ. We are within this range of the June high and the last week candle made here at 167.55. I'll need a break above with strength, above or below either of those levels to get long or short. Otherwise, I'll just be chilling until then. So once again, God bless you guys. I hope that everything's going great. I hope you have a great weekend. I'm getting this right in before the market opens, so I'm glad that I got to get it out there beforehand. And like I said, take care.